Yeah.
Yes.
I'm here, okay?
Okay. All right.
All right, text me if you need a vote, but try not to take, we don't need a vote, we just need to get through approving all the texts for Article 4. All right, thank you all for accommodation. Jack, thank you for being here too with your schedule. So, all right, I'll be here though.
Okay, so Cassandra, do you have the Article 4 use regulations that you can post for people to just look at? So we can just quickly go through the highlighted things and get over those.
I've got a paper copy in front of me too.
Yeah, good.
I can, it'll just take me a second, but I can pull it up
Okay.
on the screen.
So the first thing that was left sort of hanging from the last meeting that we had was section 4.1B6, which was the whole vibration standard. And I reworded it and we made an exception for construction activities in accordance with the building permit or special permit.
That looks good.
Does that work for everyone? So the use may not cause vibrations that are discernible without special instruments beyond any property boundary of the lot on which the use is located. We already had the exception, but we added to it vibrations caused by construction activities conducted in accordance with the building permit or special permit. Is that okay? That solve everyone's problems? Okay, hearing no objection.
I think so. I don't see how the law of unintended consequences could hit that, but we'll find out. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, always. Yes. Okay. So then on page 2, and on the non-medical marijuana establishments, that's where I moved. There's a provision there that said RMDs operated pursuant to this zoning bylaw, or hardship cultivation of marijuana conducted pursuant to 405B of the zoning bylaw are not prohibited. Everything else is. That additional phrasing came in. It was sort of tacked on to the hardship cultivation of marijuana provisions, and we sort of wanted it in there, but it just didn't belong there. So I moved it up here just so everybody knows nothing marijuana related except these two things is permitted. And so I think it's sort of set in stone there. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Looks good.
It's fine, and I don't want to belabor the point, but what exactly is a hardship cultivation?
Basically, if you have conditions that require you to have medical marijuana, you can cultivate it on your property. You can grow it for yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's in the bylaw.
But that's already defined, right?
Oh yeah, it's all in there.
Because I don't remember it. Because I think most people think a hardship would be they ran out of it. That's why they need to make more.
Okay, so then the next highlighted area was under C, principal use classifications and category descriptions. And I just wanted to point out that we have the essential services are now just about everything that is sort of small little bits and pieces of municipal and governmental and public utility items. So, public utilities like underground and overhead gas and water and even pipes and cables and all of that are all covered by essential services. And you already define this in Article 2. I can leave out that whole description and just leave essential services there if you like. So it's sort of your choice as to what.
I like this the way it's worded. It puts what typical things are, but then of course at the end it has that general catch-all or general welfare,
right?
So it can catch any new technology or something in the future, but at least let it, it's good to enunciate things so that people know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
As an architect, sometimes I say including but not limited to, but it seems like you got everything.
I think it's everything except buildings. Those are covered under governmental use. Okay, all right, moving on to page 5, residential uses, and we had added this new use of assisted living residence, and we don't really have any limitations on it, and I don't know exactly where you want it to be, so
You mean in terms of what zoning districts?
yeah.
Well, we can hash through that later as a part of the
Well, we
use,
sort of need to do it now. I mean,
as a part of the use table.
right, when we go through the use table, all right, but we do want to, I do want to know if there's going to be any limitations on, like, are you going to require it a minimum tract size? Like you have to have 3 acres in order to have one of these things, or limited number of residential units in it, or anything else? You just want to leave it open as a special permit use?
Presumably it would be allowed as a special permit under the commercial districts.
Well, that's what we'll figure out when we look at the use tables, but I think it's really residential use. So I don't know how you feel about it, but we'll put it in we can put it in just the commercial districts, that's fine. I just didn't know if you wanted to put anything else in here at all. But we don't need it, but
Well, again, I don't think we want large assisted living residences in the single family residential
Right.
district A, B, and C.
okay. So, but for now, we're gonna leave any requirements for how this is developed and how many units and all of that just open as just a special permit use.
Yeah, I think I think that's the place to
All right.
hash it out. Yeah.
All right,
And I agree with Clark that we just want to limit it to the commercial places, and then that'll
okay,
that'll really, limit
Right.
the application of it.
right. Under business uses, I just highlighted that because before I had combined automobile repair and auto body shop, and I took auto body shop and moved it down to the industrial uses. So I just wanted to highlight that. Okay. Fast food restaurant. Again, fast food restaurant is defined in Article 2. This is the only one of the categories that I don't describe. I can move over the same definition from Article 2, just so it looks the same as all the others, or we can leave it. Either way, it's a defined term.
I would just move the same thing over from Article 2, so at least
Okay.
it's there.
Okay. All right, the next one is on page 6. And this is the medical laboratory or clinic. And we had said it was going to include a rehabilitation center, but not including drug rehab or criminal rehabilitation programs. We don't have a definition of outpatient rehabilitation center. I had given you a suggested one there, which I can include in the list of new definitions to be added to Article 2.
Yeah, seems fine.
Yeah.
So we'll define that in Article 2.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
smart.
All right. Moving on to page 7, bottom of page 7, under open air businesses. We never resolved, do you or do you not want to allow storage or sale of unregistered motor vehicles in connection with an auto service station?
Do we have that now?
No. And I didn't know whether you thought that that was a sort of a common accessory use and whether or not you wanted to, allow it, or do you want to exclude it? Just either way.
Well, it seems like some of the auto repair places also sell vehicles from time to time, not necessarily exclusively. What do you
Okay.
think, David?
Want to just leave it or leave it out?
The one on the corner of
Yeah.
in
Yeah, I
Pond
would-
Street. Occasionally Wayne will have a for sale sign in his
Yeah.
and then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we probably want to leave it out because I mean, you know, a car can be unregistered very quickly. So if it's
Mhm.
you know, the way it's passing through, and we do have some that do sell them on site, and they're all going to be unregistered. So
Okay, so if
yeah,
people start complaining at town meeting, this is more restrictive, we might be able to add it back in.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll just take that phrase out. All right.
Yeah, I'd agree. It seems like it's a pure 100% uh similar use to what they're doing. They're
Right.
turning over a large number of vehicles for repair and sale or storage in some
Okay.
cases.
Okay.
It can get out of hand. I mean,
Yeah.
Hmm.
you know,
It can, but they're also stuck with the site that they're on, and we don't have any really large, you know, we don't have any large dealerships or anything like that where you could have, you know, there we have
Well, you'll
postage
allow
stamp.
dealership. Yeah, I mean, you can-
Yeah. But I mean, we have postage stamp kind of automobile
right.
service stations.
So it's
So
not an issue, so
yeah,
we'll leave it
yeah.
out. Okay. All right, if we go down, so under open air uses, I realized as I was going through this, the one thing we left out was kennel and stable. You do allow kennels and stables that are not breeding, raising and breeding animals, but I guess selling them or, you know, keeping them. Um, we should put that in the business use, but I think it's an open air use. Do you agree with me? I mean, your current bylaw says provided everything's inside a building, but I just can't imagine a stable where all activities are inside a building. So we're gonna have to put kennels and stables back, just so we don't get people upset. So the question is, does it just go under business use or open air business use?
yeah, I agree. It would be an open air business use. I think your intuition is right on that.
Okay, and now these are on, you know, these are commercial, but they're on less than 5 acres. So it's a different animal. Okay, light industrial uses, I think everything was resolved on that. And we went on to the table. So is now a good time to look at the table?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What about the accessory use?
Well, we'll get to accessory uses, but since they're not on the table, I wanted to switch, you know, because this is going to be in the principal use regulations, this principal use table. So I wanted to make sure that we were all okay with how it was set up. Originally, we had talked about possibly including lines for the overlay districts, but it just got very complicated. And since there's only, you know, a couple of uses that are allowed and they're not necessarily the same principal uses that we've got in the principal use descriptions, I just thought it would just make it too complicated. No, not, oh, sorry, not this one. This is just for your, that's the comparison. It's the table of principal uses 304.D. It's the chart.
I'll pull it up in just a second.
Yeah, okay.
It starts with
Okay.
one. It starts with one extensive uses, essential services, cemetery, childcare.
I think I sent it. Did I send it Friday? Yeah.
I got a copy in front of me. You know, I
Yeah,
understand.
there it is. Yeah. So I had originally left some spaces for the overlay districts, but it just didn't make any sense. So, and it was crowded. So I think we can
Yeah.
spread this out a little more and sort of put it sideways in the bylaw so we can have it, you know, a little more readable. And I think we made it clear in the principal use regulations themselves that, you know, all bets, you know, obviously in the overlay districts are gonna kick in. So
Yeah.
those are separate and distinct. So I think this is the way you have it now. You don't include the overlay districts now on your table. So
And the word extensive, is that an industry standard?
it's, I mean, yeah, I mean, we had talked about that and it was kind of like, these are just uses that are allowed in a lot of places. It covers a lot of things. If you can think of another kind of word.
I know, well, I pulled up the synonyms. I mean, large
Mhm.
scale, huge wouldn't really work. Boundless, I don't think works.
No, but it's like
just-
it's almost boundless because as you'll see, almost all of these are allowed in almost every district. We could put
You know,
general
I mean,
or,
what about various large scale?
well, no, because these
cover
are
it?
really exempt uses, but also uses that you just allow just because why are we regulating them? Private conservation or open space, farms, governmental use, we said we want them exempted from a lot of regulation. Cemeteries and the essential services, the underground lines and pipes and stuff.
Would it be miscellaneous uses?
Well, I don't know if it's miscellaneous. It's really uses that are pretty much allowed everywhere in town. Yeah. I mean, with the exception of the cemetery and stuff in the open space district, everything else is really allowed everywhere.
Yeah, it's just extensive, just doesn't seem to fit the categories.
Um, Permissive,
I mean, allowed uses?
well, that doesn't, we could move cemetery out of there because cemetery has the special permit provisions. We could call it generally allowed or
General uses?
general uses.
I think that would be clearer than extensive.
Or,
I mean, I don't want to be super hung up on one word. It's just that it's an oddball. I like general. And that's not on my list of synonyms.
okay, and I'll continue to look at that, but all right.
Does everyone agree? I don't want to be
Yeah.
just the one guy who's making a
No,
big
I mean, you
thing.
could use, probably general uses for that because you've got government use and,
Yeah,
and then, that's
I'm
seems good enough.
comfortable with that.
I don't think it's going to change
okay,
anything.
all right. All right, so do you want to take, we've got institutional uses, I think those are all pretty
Yeah,
much.
those are fine. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why is it a special permit in the official open space district?
I don't know, it always
Or-
was. I
Well-
didn't change it.
For essential services? Oh, okay.
Didn't change it from what it was. I didn't make up any of these.
And that, so,
These are translated from what you've got or from what was required by state law.
so I don't know if, Cassandra, do utilities come to the zoning board?
Not to like sewer
No.
and things like that, no.
I mean, I wouldn't think
No.
They
so.
wouldn't come
I
to the
think
zoning board.
the town, Edison or whatever it's called, National Grid.
They would go to the Concom if it's applicable.
Right, yeah, they're not
Right,
gonna come
they
to the
wouldn't-
zoning
yeah.
board for that.
But they
So-
wouldn't jump into the zoning board. So do we want to say yes?
Well,
No. I mean, if
Right.
you're talking about, I'd just leave it the way it is.
and that way, and also we don't want to make a lot of changes to the yeses and the special permits because that is a whole bunch of new substantive changes that you probably don't want to get into at town meeting.
Oh yeah, you mean it might slow things down.
Right, right.
Okay,
And since we're not changing it, it's not like we're adding that. So that's, so you will also see I've got stars next to the yeses on some of these things. That requires, that it just says really, it may be subject to the additional requirements of the site plan review. And I've explained that in the principal use regulations, that if there's a star next to the special permit or the yes, yeah, they got to look at site plan review. They may or may not meet the criteria for site plan review, but if they do, that's the kind of use that's subject to it.
Got it.
Okay. Iffy, and I'm just, depending upon which attorney general is looking at this, they'll probably make some noises about the childcare facility and the exempt educational uses and religious uses, because there are limits on how far you can go with site plan approval, but it's not an absolute no-no. So I'm leaving it in there. Okay, so Club or Lodge, these are all as you would have them now. Single family detached dwelling is as is now. And Tom wants to change SP1 to SPP, which is what you have now, right? Which is
That's
fine.
correct.
That's fine with me.
And the conversion, previously the conversion to a
So the
two-family
multifamily
was
two
pre-1955. Is that language
Yes,
still
and
in the-
that's described in the regulations. We
section?
took all
Okay.
that extraneous descriptive words out of the table and put it in the regulations. Now, what needs to be added into this would be the assisted living facility. And actually, we don't have to say two-family or multifamily. Multifamily dwelling is defined as two or more in your definition section. And this is how it's set up. It's only special permit use in 3 districts. There's no limitations on anything other than setbacks and so on. But we'd have to add assisted living to this list. And so that's
Okay.
the question we left ourselves with, was where would it happen? In the same places as the multifamily? That would be in the DB district, the VB district, and the HB district.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Anybody else have a different idea?
No, that's fine.
DB and highway HB. You
Yeah.
said,
Did I say HB, DB, VB, and HB?
got it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then these uses are all pretty much as you would allow them now. I had a question about the medical marijuana treatment center, because that's a planning board special permit in the, which one that is, in the TB district, but a regular, but it's not allowed anyplace else. Is the planning board the only special permit granting authority for that?
For the technology business.
No, medical marijuana. Is
Oh,
that
yeah,
correct? That's in the your
Yes.
current, okay, I
is-
just want to check.
that
Okay.
is correct.
All right.
So we haven't seen any, but of course,
Right. And
that's
we'll
the
make,
way we set it up.
right, do you want to make that subject to this site plan approval?
Yes.
Well, if it's already a special permit,
Well, site plan gives, that means that there's a little bit of a change or enlargement in the parking lot, but not the use, you'll get to take a look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to you guys anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so then,
Just a
everything
quick
else-
question, Judge Cutler. I noticed on the craft shop and artist studio line,
Yeah.
you have a question mark in one.
Oh, where are we? Yes. I didn't know what to put in. I think that is in VB. Is that the VB district?
Village Business District?
Yeah,
Oh, no, WB,
Waterfront.
WB.
WB.
waterfront.
Waterfront.
Waterfront. I don't know why I think I meant to put the question mark in the VB district, but I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't sure about what you would consider. I mean, I know you don't want artist studios and craft shops in the residential districts, but I figure you'd want them. Do you want them in all of the? Oh, I know why I put the question mark there, is because you don't allow building trades in that district. So I thought, well, if you don't allow building trades, do you allow craft shops and artist studios? Because this is sort of a newish use that we hadn't really mentioned before.
Yeah, but those are a lot more less intensive, aren't they? I mean, that would be,
Hmm.
if someone's going to sell paintings or something. Um, I just see them as less. I don't see an issue with it being in the village and in the waterfront.
So both, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, in all of those. Okay. All right, so we solved.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
As long as we don't turn into Rockport, right?
You know, your village would look kind of cute with a little bunch of artist studios, people out
Yeah.
painting and stuff.
Actually, it wouldn't necessarily be bad, but it's
You're talking about the home of the South Shore Art Festival that's been around for over 50 years, and you're telling us not to be Rockport. It's too late for that.
Okay, so we got past the personal service use, we went to the print shop. And with a lot of these, if there were no's for sort of business enterprises in the WB, I just left it no. I followed through what was already on the list for the other sort of business uses.
and so a lot of these aren't allowed in waterfront business.
Right. Like office buildings and service establishments and professional offices, none of that seems to be allowed.
Because we wanted to reserve waterfront area
Waterfront,
for boat
exactly.
shops and
Yeah.
Exactly, right,
things like that,
right.
and not get filled up with attorneys' offices.
Or
Well,
ins-
I
or
know you
insurance,
guys are all attorneys, but
Mhm.
or real estate,
architects' offices.
or try real estate brokers.
Yeah, I know those guys. Those guys.
They don't have offices really anymore, they're online.
Yes.
Okay, so then we go on to the next page and we have, again, the restaurant use, I left as a yes with site plan approval, except in the waterfront. And part of the reason I did that was because you have it as a special permit with mechanical entertainment and no special permit without. But since having mechanical entertainment is now recognized as an accessory use that requires a special permit
Yeah.
for a restaurant, we don't have to add that differentiation
Yeah.
on this chart. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay. We have site plan approval. I stuck in, if there's any place that you think, no, that shouldn't be site plan approval, please let me know. We do have to add in, one more thing I forgot to add in on the residential was, I realized you have something called lodging houses that you allow in a couple of the business districts. And that is a house where a group of people can live that are not necessarily living in independent uses, and they may not, there's no special independent cooking facilities for those people, but I guess somebody can run a boarding house.
What was the district we had that in?
I'll just check here. It's in an odd spot on me. It's allowed by special permit in all the residential districts only.
In all the residential. Oh, I think
it's an old-fashioned use, and
no, the use that would have been like the on Jerusalem Road, the Templar House before it got turned into condos. Maybe was a lodging house.
But it was all apartments, separate apartments.
Yeah, but I mean but before that it was yeah, that's like an old term. So
Do we even have any lodging houses?
and I don't think so.
Can we just take it off the list? Just delete it?
I think so.
I think it's the time has run its course on it.
Well, I don't see anybody jumping up and down and getting excited about removing it.
I think we're gonna be safe to remove it.
Unless, you know, like maybe a congregate house or veterans
Well,
house.
that would be,
uh,
well, that wouldn't be a lot. I mean, I think that would not be a lodging house. I don't know exactly what that would be. But
or
a
a
lodging
special
house
use.
is usually, you see it on old movies, where Ma runs the lodging house for her boarders and she feeds them and they
Yeah.
stay in their separate rooms, but they come together for meals.
Right, Ma Bailey and
Yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think we're okay to remove this.
good.
Okay. All right, so that resolves that. Okay, so now we go on to under veterinary, or that same list, we're gonna be adding the kennels to those outdoor
Yeah.
things. To the open air business with pet daycare and pet boarding is located. Um, so on that one, since that's sort of a new use, I wasn't sure what business districts you wanted to put it in. I just arbitrarily allowed it by right with the site plan review in the industrial district, but I didn't know how you wanted to treat that.
Mhm.
And same with commercial greenhouse and garden center. Those are sort of two new topics.
Well, I mean, space-wise with a commercial greenhouse garden center, other than on the, 3A area, I don't know where you're gonna be able to fit one in any of the other
Which one is the 3A area? That's,
Highway business.
a highway
Highway.
business, yeah.
you want to just
Um,
put it there?
Yes,
I
I
mean,
Yes.
would limit it to highway business.
yeah, I mean, what other districts would be? I mean, you're not gonna do in the waterfront, you're not gonna do in the village. There's no room. Um,
And we already have one or two. Oh, excuse me.
yeah. Well, I mean, just make sure that the ones we got there in the right district. Um, but I mean, the other districts, I can't. Am I missing one, Clark? I mean, I think the highways the only.
Well, maybe technology business
Yes, yeah,
Um,
yeah. That would be it. Yeah.
would that be,
Special permit or by right? You allow retail stores by right in that district. So this is kind of like a retail store, but it's just outside.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the one where we have, they're storing all their wares in the 3A state right of way. It might, it might be good to at least get
I,
a site plan review.
yeah, I
Hmm.
think so. I think so.
Okay, and
So
same with
go ahead.
and the open air wholesale sales or storage business, that is enclosed under your bylaw. Seems like it's mostly enclosed, but then there's sort of an indication, and mixed in with other uses, there's this, lumber yard and that sort of thing. So I'm lumping that as open air wholesale sales or storage business.
So you had a question, do we want to put it in technology business? Because there is one right now.
Yeah, I don't know if there is one, but
Well, there's storage,
yeah.
um, container storage up on top of the landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Judge,
I'll put it by
you've
special
never seen
permit or
it,
something.
but maybe it's a special permit instead of. I wanted to go back to C where you say dealership. I think
Mm.
you mean automotive dealership,
And
but
that's how it's described. And
but
well, any kind of dealership, it could be motorcycles or trailers or any kind of
tractors,
tractors. Yeah,
tractor trailers.
right.
I mean, is it
Well,
any vehicle?
vehicles, yeah, mostly vehicles and equipment.
I mean, would it be any
Wouldn't be
vehicle?
boats. Boats are in the boatyard.
Do we want to say
Well, it's described
vehicle
in
dealers? Okay, you've got
described
in the
in
definition. Okay,
uses.
fine.
Let me just pull it
I don't,
out.
we don't need to belabor it if you've got it covered.
course, I don't have the page in front of me. I will dig it out while we're chatting, but it's described as a whole bunch of things. It's like just about anything you might want to have in a dealership.
Got it.
Uh,
Thank you.
And those are special permit uses, so there's controls on it. Okay, so you want to make open air wholesale sales or storage special permit?
For technology business,
Yeah. Or do you want to leave it out?
or what about highway? I mean, right, it says no right now. Do we want,
Yeah, right now you wouldn't allow
Wholesale.
any outside sales stuff.
like, an example would be the Williams. They sell dirt, rocks,
Yeah,
things.
that would be an example, yeah. So you could allow it, maybe, I think in the industrial business, industrial district.
Does it have to be wholesale?
Well, it's wholesale sales or storage business. If it's not wholesale and they just have, you don't have anything that allows for really outside sales, except your commercial greenhouse and garden center. Like you don't allow someone to have, piles of loam for sale unless it's sort of accessory to what they're doing.
Well, yes, I mean, the Williams yard it's not wholesale, but it is piles of loam, and
So you would just call it open air sales or storage?
I mean, is it open air storage and open air
could-
sales,
Or,
or?
or both. I mean, they could.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's got to be more open air sales because it doesn't necessarily, because we have that's not wholesale. Or yeah.
I mean, it's
Or it
sort
could
of for
be
contractors only, really, but
yeah.
but
So I mean,
homeowners, I mean, I walk in there and schedule deliveries.
yeah, because I mean, a place like that could have, they could have their wholesale price for contractors and then their retail price for citizens. They could have a mix of both.
Are you saying that I pay double because I walk in as a Joe homeowner?
You pay double because they see Clark. That's
Oh,
why you
yeah,
pay
yeah,
double.
I open my checkbook, it says Clark, and like, oh
That's
yeah,
right.
we got
That's
a
right.
live one.
Clark 02025. That's all you got to see.
Okay, so,
So we remove wholesale because
let's see. So it's right now it's described as wholesale sales or commercial storage facilities such as a lumber yard, fuel storage plant, or contractor's yard, where some or all of the products are stored outside of a building. This use category does not include junk yards or,
Yeah,
salvage
yeah.
yards or whatever. So we could take out the word wholesale.
I think
Just
so.
have wholesale and
Yeah.
retail sales.
Yes.
wholesale
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
retail
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah.
just open air sales and storage business.
Mhm. Okay.
It also has to do with volume too. If you're if you're getting at retail, you might only want a yard of something. Whereas if you're a contractor, you could be getting a lot more in
Right.
volume, and you're going to get a better. You might get a wholesale price for that, or a
Right.
better wholesale. Yeah.
Right. And then you wanted to know what a dealership was, so I did find it. It is an establishment for retail sales of new and or used cars and trucks, motorcycles, house trailers, small aircraft, and the like, including a sales room and customarily related dealership facilities. So your Honda dealer, your,
The Cessna dealer.
John Deere.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're covered.
Okay, so then we have light manufacturing, which is a whole, definition in our descriptions of what is allowed. And that covers a lot of things. It's manufacturing, processing, fabrication, packaging, and testing of food, textiles or medical, electronic, mechanical, wood, or plastic products where the operations are confined within a building and where appropriate facility and process controls are maintained to ensure that all dust, fumes, smoke, and vapors are effectively confined to the premises, and that no noise, vibration, or flashing of light is perceptible without instruments beyond the boundaries of the lot on which the use is located. So it covers a whole lot and it excludes a whole lot because we have taken out things like bottling plants and some of the heavier duty publishing, printing, manufacturing kinds of things. They were much too heavy duty, and we talked about them early
Yeah.
on in June and said take those out. So we're really just light manufacturing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it's
Repair.
not just the manufacturing of lights.
No.
No one's gonna get confused
No.
about that.
Repair garage, I just highlighted that because that's where I added in auto body shop. So that would be your car painting, your,
Yeah.
dent and scratch repairs and stuff like that. And then the repair garage is for large scale equipment and
Now,
could
now
be-
the auto body shops, what are the three that we're doing the special permits on those? I can't see which district those are.
oh, that is the
Highway,
uh,
technology, and light industry.
industrial, technology, and highway.
Okay. What do we do about the village? Because don't we have one there right now?
Well, you don't allow it right now.
You mean the gas station?
Yeah,
Well, a
Well,
gas station is allowed.
yeah, but they do repairs there.
Well, actually, no, automobile service stations are not allowed. So it must be a non-conforming use.
Yeah, yeah.
and it's been approved by special permit for redevelopment.
That whole site.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
if it happens.
Well, if it doesn't, then it's still existing non-conforming.
Yeah, yeah. But if they ever go to
Well.
well,
I mean,
in terms of
they do.
what we do in the village, I would say auto repair is probably a better use for out on 3A than the precious real estate that we have in the village.
No, I agree. I mean, it's changed over time. There used to be another gas station there where next to what's the pizza place where was it Peel Pizza? That that next building over.
Yeah,
That used to be a gas station and they used to do repairs there too. And then Sean Cunning made it the insurance building and things like that. So we have had it in the village before, but it's obviously that use is going away and at least moving to the 3A for the most part. But yeah. So we
I
can
think
just
it's
leave it
okay
the
to
way
have
it is. Leave it the way it is for now, and then if anybody says anything, we can deal with it then, I guess,
Just backing up just 1 second to pet daycare and pet boarding. Did
Yes.
you decide what districts that was going to be allowed in besides the industrial?
Well, it's pet daycare is and pet boarding. Very often they have a large outdoor area.
Yeah, so this is an outdoor business use, yeah.
I don't think it would be compatible for single family residential areas.
No, that's a no.
That's
I
gone.
put that's no. That's no.
That's
But
off
what-
yeah.
Yeah, that's not under consideration.
And the village is, densely
Right, so you don't want that.
residential
Yeah.
use.
No
So
for the village, no for the harbor. You're only
I
looking
would
at
say
really
highway, yeah,
highway.
highway and technology business.
Highway technology and the yeah.
And yes, there's special permit.
I'd say yes. Well, You might want site plan of where it's located and how it's located.
All right, so yes with a site plan.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then the last group is renewable energy. And I'm changing the title energy and communication uses because we took out the telecommunication towers. We were planning on developing something for that.
Okay.
We'll just change it to renewable energy.
Yeah.
And we've got the large, and I'm just here, we're just so I added in, and this is something brand new.
Yeah.
So right now, you only allowed, the only solar facilities you allow as a principal use, or any kind of use really, is on two pieces of land.
Yeah.
Yep, at the dump
In the
and
overlay district, two small pieces of land. The Attorney General's office has been going nuts lately over where towns allow these solar facilities. So I stuck it in the light industrial, but how big is the district is that? Is that? Because
there's not
they don't,
much, there's
it's a
not much
really-
light industrial left. I mean, there's some at the harbor.
There's one lot there.
well,
And
where
what-
else are we going to allow it? Because they're not going to accept the fact that you only allow it in one small piece.
The overlay district covers, is in the technology business district for that
Within the
one
technology.
parcel. It is technology. I mean, I would say if we're picking a small area, it would be the technology business.
But
Yeah.
that's small, but that is very small.
No, it's not big, but light industry is even smaller.
Okay, so both of those.
I guess. I mean, we don't want to use up the 3A highway business necessarily for. I mean, basically, we zoned with the overlay districts, the two landfills.
Yeah, I know,
the
and
solar
that's
panel.
not gonna be acceptable.
So you're saying that the AG's wants us to increase those areas?
Yeah, so what they've been doing is as towns have come in, the AG has been looking at their uses and whether they allow, so a lot of towns didn't touch solar energy. Like it wasn't a listed thing.
Yeah,
Now they're trying to put it in, but they're putting it only in like their industry district. But
Yep.
usually a lot of towns have very small industry districts, and the Attorney General has been saying that that's, I mean, she's going too far because this is not her job. It's her job to point out that it could be struck down by a court for being too restrictive. But
Yeah.
she's basically making herself a judge and saying it's too restrictive. So this, I'm striking out this amendment.
well,
So we don't want it, we want it at least bigger than it is now. And hopefully,
okay. Well,
you know.
then you know, we have two overlay parcels. Now, the two landfills, why don't you just make them, you know, light industry and technology business? Now, I've been reading a lot of articles on water, you know, floating solar panels because they have plenty of solar access, no trees in the way. I mean,
Right.
it's possible that we have two reservoirs in our town, Lily Pond and the Aaron River Reservoir,
Mhm.
large, you know, hundreds of acres.
Mhm.
But I don't know if they're water districts or whether the underlying residential district.
Could this be something that could be possibly special permit in the OS district? Or is that too sacrosanct? Because sometimes they'll allow them, for example, over cranberry bogs or something.
Yeah, it's sort of the same idea as over our water supply reservoirs. But I don't know about open space. I mean, I wouldn't offer that unless we had to, because you know, our
Okay,
open
well,
space
I mean,
is
Yeah.
Worst case
Wheeler
scenario,
Park and
strike it, we'll have to do
Wampatuck.
something else.
I think if you stick with the light industry and the technology business
Mhm.
and start with that and
Okay.
the overlay, obviously, but I think those two and
Well,
that's it.
if we take, if, you know, one thing we could do is change the overlay district to say, you know, so it's no longer an overlay district and it's just within the technology business district, you can do this
Yeah.
by special permit. I mean, it's sort of redundant now, but we can fix that later also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Those would be the two areas I think that would be
Right.
appropriate for it.
okay,
Yeah,
And then-
again, I would not want to offer up our open space.
Right.
Some serious debate,
okay,
but the water reservoirs, that may be something to flag for future discussion.
okay. Wind energy conservation facility, you have nothing in the bylaw to indicate whether these turbines are accessory or principal. So how say you? What is it?
Well, we had, the planning board has had two applications.
A large scale or are they small?
Large
Yeah.
scale. One was the trustees of reservation in a little corner that's surrounded by Hingham.
Mhm.
That the closest house is 2 miles away. The closest Cohasset house was 2 miles away. But then we approved it, and they fought it out in court, and
Okay, so,
they
yeah,
decided
so
to
my-
not build it.
Okay, so my question is, do you want also accessory wind energy facilities? Or just leave it as a principal use?
Well, I mean, the other one was two on two parcels. One was the in the technology business district, but they weren't really principal uses of the land.
Well, that's the question.
I mean, does it have to be either or
Or both. It's
both?
Yeah,
I mean,
and I definitely you allow the larger scale ones, and so that would be a principal use. And it doesn't say exactly where in your you don't have an overlay district. It's just, if you want to do this, it's a special permit use. And I don't see anything in the bylaw that restricts it to where that could be.
You mean it could be out on the harbor or someplace that's windier than average?
No, it could be in any district. There's nothing in it that indicates that it's limited to any particular district.
I don't, because you have it right now as a special in the light industry, right?
Yeah, that was my, I
I
sort of
don't know if we want it there, because that means you
Don't
could put
want
one on the harbor.
Okay.
So
You think people would be excited about that?
I think it would generate a little excitement. I mean,
Well,
we'd
I mean,
certainly have a few less seagulls. I know that much, but
I mean, they were proposed for the behind the landfill, up off Crocker Lane
yeah.
and behind Hingham Lumber.
Yeah, the one there, I mean, that was a holy war. I mean, that was about 20 years ago, but I mean, that was the planning board, and I don't know if you were on it back then.
I was.
Yeah,
There was a lot of concern about infrasound
and flicker and everything. Yeah, yeah. Well,
and
because across the street is a residential district. That's why.
right.
So I mean,
There's absolutely nothing in here that says what portions of town you can allow these in. It's an
Yeah.
open special permit. So without changing that particular thing, the only thing we can do is put something in this table.
we have to. I mean, number one is obviously not residential, that's for sure, and then
And
and
not in the village.
not in the village, not in the harbor,
Well-
not in the light industrial, because that's really the harbor as well.
So maybe highway business, technology business, and light industry, but then anybody who comes in with large scale permitting is going to be tough.
Well, they're in those areas
Yeah.
or anywhere, because
Anywhere, honestly, anywhere.
and they could go into a residential district right now.
Other than, the one that the example I gave of the trustees of reservations, where the closest Cohasset house was miles away.
Mm.
it's gonna have some impact on the neighborhoods or residential,
Wherever they are, yeah.
residential uses, even the highway business district, but I could only see it being HBTB LI and prohibited elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But this may be something to discuss along with the reservoirs for photovoltaics.
Right.
When do
Well,
we have to
we don't have a
decide?
lot of time here, so we
When do we
gotta
have to
decide this
decide by?
next week at the latest.
Yeah, well then, and I mean,
I mean,
don't you think we should limit it to,
Well, I guess you know best because you passed it. And I don't know whether it was discussed as to where this would be or whether it was just open-ended and
the
whoever wanted to apply could come in for a special permit. And
well,
they
the,
might-
the technology district is basically the whole district that Avalon's in, right?
no, it's up Crocker Lane, Hingham Lumber and everything up the
Up
hill.
there, okay.
TV.
Technology. I mean, that's the only district I could see it, and you don't want it in highway business because then it runs the whole route of 3A.
Yeah, and then residential right off.
Yeah,
off the
and
highway.
you don't want it in light industry because that's basically the harbor because you've got that property down there.
So you're making the case for only allowing in technology business.
Right, that could be considered a major change. Just, I don't know if anybody's got an ox that's gonna be gored by this.
Well, it's something you want to limit. I mean, you're definitely not going to want it in residential. You're not going to put it in the village. I mean, they can only go where there's the proper air, airflow anyway to for it to spin. So it's got to be that's the only place that it would be.
Okay.
And even though it's a war to have it, if you're going to have it in the bylaw at all, that's really the only place that it would be appropriate to go. You don't want it anywhere else on the highway business.
Right, so you want-
I would say that bylaw got passed and the planning board administered the special permit.
Yep.
And we were all learning new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
about infrasound and we weren't really necessarily when it got passed as a bylaw necessarily thinking about these kinds of impacts on residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, the impacts weren't really known until they were done in other towns, and then you had the data that could measure the impacts of what had happened. And then you also had at the time when it was passed, because remember it was passed before it you end up going through on the planning board. There was also at the time there was a lot of money around to try and grant money and things and a lot of incentivization of it to start these. So but if you're looking at it now, if we're going to have it in the bylaw anywhere, I think you've got to really severely limit it because we do know there's impacts and you want to keep it as away from the residential as much as possible. And I think the technology one is probably that's if you're going to put it somewhere, that's the place to do it.
Sure, of course and then it impacts the Avalon development. I know it's called something else now, which is probably one of the densest residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, now it is. So
I mean, in terms of per person per acre.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we handled that and we're back to accessory uses, almost there. All right, so this is page 9. Of the other document. All right, and we went through this medical marijuana treatment thing. This is basically what you already have. We've just sort of fixed up the language a little bit. We had on page 10, we had stuck in multifamily dwelling as a reserved thing, but instead we're changing that to multifamily housing is reserved for when we ultimately adopt that by right, multifamily housing. But for now, we're just gonna put back in here, multifamily dwellings, special permit
Okay.
use, just as you have it. You know,
Yep.
you don't have any particular regulations for it or anything. It's just a
No.
special use. Okay. And okay, so then we go on to page 11. There was nothing new. We were dealing with the accessory dwelling units. And I don't think we changed anything there until page 12. So yeah.
Did you incorporate Tom's language or just make it so you can change
That's what
the
I'm,
exterior?
that's what I'm looking at on J, and that's what we're trying to figure out. So this says exterior alterations of the principal single-family dwelling to accommodate the ADU, including construction of exterior stairways or exits by law. Doesn't exclude anything. Must be designed so the exterior appearance remains that of a single-family detached. Now, right now, it does not say you can't add anything to it. But the next one says that the exterior alterations to either the principal dwelling or an accessory building must be compatible with the architecture of the principal single-family dwelling and may not result in any increase in gross floor area. And I think that's the question mark. Right now, you don't allow an increase in gross floor area.
Yeah, and to create another dwelling unit, you almost have to.
In gross floor area? No, if you're
Increase
doing
the-
it in a garage, you don't. You might do it on the second
Okay, well,
floor.
then almost.
Yeah.
I mean,
But if it wasn't a garage, what if you were going to totally?
Let's say
if
you
it
had the
was a
tool
pool
shed.
house?
Yeah.
If it was a pool house or it was a
Yeah.
barn or something else.
Or may not, must be within the required setbacks and, meet the.
Yeah, of course.
must meet the-
I mean, the only question is if you allow an increase in gross floor area, how much do you allow? That's the.
Well, remember because you limit
900 would be the
dwelling unit
the
to 900,
maximum. Right.
but that doesn't mean that someone says, well, I want to put a 900 square foot dwelling unit in my house and I want, in order to make it work right, I need to build a whole new wing for the, for other portions of my house. Because I'm taking up the family room and the kitchen and so on. And so now I need to add
Yeah.
on a whole new family room and kitchen.
Right, or you
So-
take over a garage and now you need to build a garage.
Right.
I mean, I think it's related to F where you're saying no increase in gross floor area, no alteration of the footprint of a non-conforming building. I mean, I would say as long as you don't create a new non-conformity,
Mm-hmm.
that I think is the most it is restrictive enough.
Mm-hmm. So on this one, this gets to another discussion we had. So this has always been something, and I'm sure this was written in a way to assure people that not everybody in their neighborhood was going to be adding accessory units. So it had to be an existing house. Number one, it has to have been existing for 10 years, and you couldn't increase any gross floor area or make any major changes to the outside of it. So that was very limiting language.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
if we allow increases in gross floor area, the question is, why are we limiting it? You're saying, so if you have an existing house, you can add on, and have an accessory dwelling.
I think
You
so,
can't build a new house with an accessory dwelling in it. Or you
because you're
can't build a new
limited to 10 per year. So
We're already limited.
you're not going to get one in every house on the street.
So do you want to, that's a significant change to open it up to allow new ones to be
Well, I
built.
would for K, I would just get rid of that last phrase and may not result in any increase in gross floor area.
You think people will buy that?
Well, I mean, right now the bylaw is dysfunctional.
Hmm.
It hasn't worked in whatever, 17 or 18 years,
Hmm.
except for that one example.
Okay.
So, I mean, for F, I would change it to not creating any new nonconformity, and then,
Which we did,
um,
we did that. That was, your suggestion was no alteration of the
no
footprint
increase.
and no increase in nonconformity.
That then I think taking out this no and may not result in any increase in gross floor area. Because it still has to, it can't, if you're over on your structural area, whatever it's 20% or 25% of the lot, you can't create a new nonconformity by creating an ADU. But I think essentially you may need to create more square footage, provided that it doesn't create a new nonconformity, go from 25% to 26%.
Well, what happens if you're trying to do it and you're making it less non-conforming? In other words, if you have a garage that's not necessarily attached to the house, but it's back a little ways, or it's closer to the side yard or something, and you're saying, I want to knock that down and bring it or attach it closer to the house, so you're making something less non-conforming.
Well, I think there's a lot of options there, but no net increase in floor area. To me, it's kind of a deal killer. If you have an existing house, what are you going to take?
Yeah, no, I agree that, but I'm just, when we're talking about not extending the nonconformity, what do you do in the case where someone's trying to make it less nonconforming, which happens a lot when you're
And
doing.
that's not an increase in the nonconformity. That's
Yeah,
reduction.
yeah. So that would be okay.
Yeah.
Because that happens a lot of time in development. You've got stuff that was built 30 years ago, and wherever it is, and they're either moving it or they're bringing it closer.
So then you also have to limit the no alteration of the footprint, because the only
Yeah.
other thing they could do to increase the gross floor area would be to go up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, again, these are limited to 10 per year.
Yeah.
So if for some reason the first 1 or 2 or 3 come through and they seem to be problematic for a particular neighborhood, we can always change it back. But
Mhm.
again, the just to be completely repetitive, it's been a dysfunctional bylaw for a decade and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
most
Footprint.
times when you're redeveloping something, and if you're either doing a knockdown or if you're knocking down a garage and rebuilding it or doing something like that, because so many of our homes are already pre-existing non-conforming.
That's right.
But the bylaw always leans to making something less non-conforming, and you get more credit for doing that, or it's seen as a better project to do that. And I think we want to make sure that this aligns with that philosophy.
Right.
That if someone's going to do it, that I'm thinking especially with a garage, because there's a lot of people who have detached garages that are not close to the house. They're in the backyard, they're to the side, and so if they want to knock that down and bring it closer, making the structures less non-conforming, that's something you want to incentivize.
Right. Okay.
But in F, it says no increase in nonconformity. But I think what I was getting at what is not creating a new nonconformity.
Or increase the nonconformity. You don't want to, yeah, I mean, new or increase. You don't want it to be closer to the setback.
Yeah.
I mean, in the second to last phrase, no alteration of the footprint of a non-conforming building,
So we're taking that out.
yeah, good.
Okay. We move on to common driveways.
Sure.
What, did we cover the ADU? Are we done?
Well, we looked at it last time ad nauseum, and I made the changes that you requested, and then we've made more changes.
It's a miracle.
Do you want to look at it again? Do you want to look? I mean, hopefully you would looked at it.
No, Judge Cutler, you did a wonderful job.
Hey, Jack's here. Hi, Jack.
I've been here all along, although I've also been in an executive session with the select board, and I have secrets that I'm not going to tell you guys.
Good.
Judge Cutler did a very good job. I'd like to make the motion.
No motions, because unless we have a quorum, do we have a
Yeah.
quorum?
Yeah,
All right.
I
So,
think,
okay.
No,
So we
what
got
Tom
common
said we were
driveway.
not voting on it. We were just
Yeah.
reviewing
Aye.
the language.
Okay, common driveways. We had gone through the common driveway thing, and I think everyone was pretty satisfied with it. The question was whether we wanted to keep 4 or go back to 3. And I think we agreed that 4, we should leave it at 4 on separate lots. And we have a definition that we're gonna have to add. So I think I'd given you a proposed definition that it's a privately owned driveway providing access between the street and a maximum of 4 lots for single-family dwelling use. And all the stuff about it has to be through the frontage, each lot has to satisfy frontage requirements, all that stuff that's currently in the definition has come out, it's in these regulations. Because definitions should not have regulations in them, they should just say what you're talking about, and then you're saying here, you can have a common driveway with these limitations.
Yep.
Oh, okay. And this also is the one that says, and a common driveway is never frontage.
Yep, and you changed to 750 length.
Yes,
That's good.
I changed the length from 1,000 to 750.
That's yeah, that's what we have
Mhm.
currently. That's good.
Now I left the 10 feet from the boundary line. I know that regular driveways can be up to 5 feet.
Right.
But I think we talked about leaving it at 10 for a common
No, I
driveway.
think that's a practical consideration.
Okay,
And it gives some room for screen trees or whatever.
right. Okay, so we have
And
14.
you had taken out the required screening as an option.
What did I do? I think so, yes. Yeah, there's no required screening. If you want to screen it, you can screen it.
Okay.
You can require it as part of your requirements for the special permit.
Okay.
Okay, on 14, we didn't change anything on the family home daycare or the guest house. We're gonna have to revise the definition of guest house because it calls it a dwelling and it's not a dwelling. It's an accessory building that can be used for guests. So I'm gonna have a new definition for that. I think with the home occupation, that was the one with the screening in it. I think we adjusted it. Maybe on page 15. No. No screening requirement. Okay. Right, so hardship cultivation of medical marijuana is basically what you have now. Probably adjusted some language just so, and I may still do it. Every time I see shall, I get agita. You really shouldn't use shall, it's must or may. Unless you're ordering someone to do something, you don't use the word shall. So I'm going to be taking out shall in this.
Are you going to put in must?
I'm going to put in may not, or, so hardship, if it's cultivation and storage, it may not occur in an accessory building, may not. And it must be in an enclosed locked indoor area.
Must. Got it.
Must. Right, okay. All righty, so we get to, we didn't make any changes to anything else until we get to small scale solar energy systems. Oh, I'm sorry, 9 was parking and garaging of commercial motor vehicles, and we were talking about, well, what is a light commercial motor vehicle? And if you look at, I think if you look at the DMV's requirements for who has to get a commercial registration, it's more than 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. So,
Yeah, that's a good way to align that one.
small scale solar energy systems, we have to have some kind of a definition. And I was suggesting it's they're accessory roof mounted or ground mounted solar energy facilities designed to generate electricity principally for heat and light. I was going to add power to serve the principal use. So I will be giving you that listing this week of the new definitions, and you can fool around with them if you want. And then we had talked about the roof mounted accessory solar energy panels being exempt from height regulations. And that would mean it's like one of those above the roof things, like a chimney or an HVAC system or something like that. That's how it would be treated. So it would have those same limitations. Ground mounted accessory solar energy installations would be subject to height, setback, and ground coverage regulations that would be applicable for accessory structures in whatever the underlying district is. So I suppose you could have almost, if you were, I guess you could have sort of a building size accessory structure almost on some large lot in a large district, but you can't have unreasonable regulation or nearly prohibit them. So this is sort of a way to open things up in a very limited fashion. The electric vehicle charging stations, we had talked about the fact that what about for home use? Because the way I had drafted it was really related to things that might go in some parking lot someplace. And so what I added was this first sentence that in all districts, one private electrical vehicle charging station within an enclosed building is allowed as a right. So anybody, anywhere, if they have a little garage or something and they want to put their charging station in there, no one's going to bother them. If they start having multiple ones, that's a variance, I guess. We can make it 2 if you want.
With that one, how would it be treated when you're dealing with like the highway business district or something like that? When you have gas stations? No.
Well, if it's private, so this would be business wants to have it for themselves, their own car, their own, the cars that they use. They don't open it to the public. It's in the business districts that we go on to the next one where it's open to the public.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But if a homeowner has 2 electric cars, then he has to get a variance?
I said we could put in 2, but you don't want to have somebody who says, well, it's an enclosed building, I got 10 of them, and then it's not really an accessory use anymore. So I think you have to limit it.
I mean, do you want to allow in residential districts?
I think in all districts.
Because it's going to be in their house.
Could be in a
No,
house, could be a small business, and he, has his own garage attached to his back of his business where he keeps his commercial vehicle, and he happens to have an electric vehicle and puts it in there. It's not open to the general public. Really, we don't care. We don't have to say anything about it.
Yeah, but the key is here is it's within an enclosed building, so it's within the garage. So you're not going to have, there's not too many people who've got a 5-car garage.
Well,
Right.
all you need to do is to get rid of 1.
Well,
If it's in somebody's garage,
any number,
there are 3.
Okay, could I address this? One of the issues that's come up with the electrical charging of the batteries is that, especially with aftermarket batteries, they do burn. There's a real problem in the cities of electric bikes overcharging. So I think we need to have some type of fire protection. It could say something that electrical charging station subject to regulations promulgated by the fire department. The problem with 2 of them is that way you keep them plugged all the time. And some of the things that are coming out now is that when they're plugged in all the time, they should be plugged in, they should charge up, and then they should shut off. But if they're left on all the time, you have a situation where the charging is going up and down, and that will create stress on the electric. And if this is in an enclosed building, those electric fires are really nasty because they self-feed themselves. So
Well,
I
do
think,
you want to, I mean, we don't have to, we don't have to discuss the private electrical vehicle charging station. If that's sort of a customary accessory use, if it's just for your private use as the owner of the property, we don't have to say anything about it in zoning. Now,
No,
that
this
may,
is-
yeah,
well, I just think if we're going to mention electric, we should start having protections that any charging station should be consistent with fire department regulations. And let the fire department, because this is really starting to get,
Well, do we want the fire department to review and approve
mm-hmm.
of a vehicle charging station?
I'll
I
bet
don't
if you
think they
ask,
would want to.
I bet you if you ask them, they'd say that they should.
I know, and in some cases, new construction, you have to put basically a 1 hour fire rating between a dwelling unit and a garage.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you know, for anything that's 30 years old or more, there might be nothing there, no protection whatsoever.
Do you want to take out the words within an enclosed building? That's why I highlighted them. I wasn't sure whether you wanted them or not in an enclosed building.
I think you really need to, and I don't know where this should be, but I think as an overall policy for the town, we need to start being very aggressive on saying these charging stations, I mean, they are of serious fire danger and they're getting worse, especially now that we're starting to see the new batteries tend to be very high quality, but the replacement ones are kind of secondary. You bought it on the internet, and they're an expensive thing, and they overheat fairly readily. And if they start burning, you literally can't put them out with conventional things. So I don't know how we're going to address it, but I think we need to.
I think because of I agree, Jack, in that the materials, the fire department needs to be aware if there's going to be a charging station in a residential, from what you're saying, because if it does catch fire, what they would have to use to put it out would be different than just hosing it down with water. So,
Yes.
you know, so that there's got to be, it has to pass through them in some way, shape, or form, I guess. Is
Why don't I call the chief tomorrow and say,
Okay.
you know, why did I give myself more work?
Yeah. Okay, so, all right, we'll put that off on the bucket list. Then in all, going on to the next part of that, in all non-residential districts, the planning board may approve the installation of one or more accessory electric vehicle charging stations through site plan review. No cost to the user. The installation would not result in the reduction of required parking spaces. It would allow for safe and easy accessibility, and the planning board can condition its approval with appropriate safeguards, such as imposing a limit on the height, number, and type of charging stations allowed on the premises and requiring screening and landscaping. So this is a situation where planning board has a parking lot design that they're looking at, and somebody wants to put their electric vehicle in the parking lot, because you usually use the whole space for it. So this would allow the planning board to figure out the right location and screening and so forth.
This may be a detail, but the charging service is provided at no cost to the user. You mean
Right.
the electricity?
Yeah.
When does that ever work?
Hmm?
Well,
Well, in other words, this is not retail charging where you invite the public to come and put their coins in and
Oh,
charge.
yeah.
These are people who work or visit there or whatever on a routine basis. And this is part of the parking lot, if you will. And, oh, I'm here to work and I'm going to stick my car in this charging station while I'm working, so it'll charge up.
Because if it's free charging, then and everybody's going to want to use it. I mean,
Well, it's an
even at
excessive.
4 cents a mile, it's there's still some cost involved, and I guess nationally the costs vary widely,
Yeah.
depending on how desperate people are to charge their car.
But I mean, you don't want you know, you don't want someone having a business on their property, taking up their parking spaces and having, you know, coin operated or, you know, charge card operated charging stations. I mean, or maybe you do,
So-
but that's a different
So this
use.
isn't the kind of charging, like we're used to seeing on the highways.
No. This is
This is
accessory to
private.
the,
It's private.
this is on, you know, I mean, in a sense, it's sort of public because people who can park there have access to it.
Right, but even the town hall, charging stations, don't they still, you have to pay for it.
Do you?
I think if they haven't yet, they're changing over, that's for sure.
Okay. Well, we can take out no cost, but you know, you don't want them to be having people lined up as a business, that's all.
Well, I mean, you know, that's the thing. I mean, people drive to Cohasset in their electric cars and they got 5 miles left, and this is the thing that
Yeah.
gets them so they can get home, right?
We can take out no charge. But this is accessory to the business. That's all I'm trying to.
That'd be
emphasize.
fine, sure. I think that makes sense. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really thinking about as gas stations change over, and that you're going to have a couple spots where there's going to be electrical charging
Mhm.
at your typical service station.
All right.
That's the
people-
one that I'm thinking of the most.
Had people hanging out for half an hour, so they can get home, right?
Yeah.
All right, so leave it to the planning board to figure that out. Okay. Drive-through, drive-up service facility is a new situation. Right now, you only talk about these in terms of a bank. And you require a special permit for a bank with a drive-up facility. You're now allowing banks by right with subject to site plan approval, but if they are going to have a drive-through or drive-up service facility attached, or if any business wants to, I suppose a dry cleaner or somebody, they can come in and get a special permit. And so I've defined it as an accessory feature such as a service window or automated machine used by businesses to provide to serve customers waiting in vehicles with products or services. And on this one, the planning board has to find that it's customarily accessory to the business served. So not anybody can just pop up and decide they want one. That will not result in undue safety hazards on the premises or any adjacent public way. And at a minimum, I threw in these 4 requirements, and you may have some other ideas or not want to put those. But I think you ought to know what the wait time is going to be, so you know how long that circulation line has to be, the waiting line. You want it dedicated. You don't want just people wandering through the parking lot, sort of driving up to the drive-up window. You don't want it interfering with any parking aisle or fire lane on-site circulation. And the drive-through service lane would have to be designed so there's adequate space to accommodate the expected number of waiting vehicles at peak times. And then the entrance and exit may not be located closer than 25 feet from any intersection or pedestrian crosswalk. And
Yeah,
that's just-
I think it makes sense as good as you can do, because I mean, we've got to think of it in terms of this, is that when you have your normal gas station and we say, oh, well, there's a gas station and people can pull in and out. Well, yeah, it only takes 2.5 minutes to fill up your car and then go. With the charging, the time period is so much longer that there's going to be a lot of other ancillary places that are going to end up having to have charging stations, whether it's an office building or for their employees or other things like that. So
Right. But this is not that. This is the
I
drive.
understand.
Oh,
yeah, the drive up or the
Right.
drive up service. So to have it encapsulated in other ancillary places is fine. You know, I mean, a special permit gives you the belt and suspenders to properly install it, if at all.
But this isn't the charging station that she's talking about. She's talking about drive through and drive up.
If you have a bank or I suppose a restaurant wants a drive-up window or
Starbucks.
Starbucks, something like that, yeah. Or even a bank, you know, as a one of those automated teller machines that they sort of have that.
No, I think these are good.
Mechanical or live entertainment, right now, you require a special permit for that, for the restaurant use in these districts, so I just emphasize that that's what it is, and the planning board is the special permit granting authority for that in the BB district. The open
Good.
display and storage of goods and products, this is again, accessory is permitted as accessory to a business or light industrial use, subject to, and these are all requirements in your current bylaw. It's conducted, the business is conducted completely in an enclosed business, and no portion of the open display or storage extends beyond the building setback requirements, unless the town allowed as a temporary use. We'll see that later. Trailers and mobile homes, this is essentially what you have now. We didn't change that. We didn't change the outdoor amusements everywhere except the OS district by special permit. Outdoor retail sale of holiday decorations, just sort of, I think we talked about this last time, and
Yeah.
pretty much just tweaked. Same with temporary and enclosed storage, and temporary display of goods and services was the exception to having no outside display for most businesses. So that's the temporary uses. And then we get to the bigger stuff. This is the affordable housing requirement. Right now we call it inclusionary housing, but I just changed it to affordable housing contribution requirement.
Is that what people are using these days? That's industry standard?
There's no industry standard on it, but inclusionary housing is really not, I wanted to make it something that was clear that this is affordable and that it's a requirement, and it's, housing. So I just sort of gave it a phrase that AHC is easy. We can call it inclusionary housing requirement if you want.
No,
I
I'm
think that's
okay
a
with,
lot.
I'm
Yeah.
okay with
It's just
your
a short,
instincts on this.
it's just a shorthand. So I put in a sort of purpose for it. A little different from what you have, because I wanted to get away from serving the town and really sort of, you want housing opportunities throughout the town, but not necessarily just for townspeople. And you want to create local action units. This is your requirement now for inclusion in the town's subsidized housing inventory. And so because of that, these requirements will apply. Now, you say any increase of more than 5 dwelling units in your current bylaw. It did not cover situations like a subdivision or development where the developer is not actually building the units. Question as to whether or not we really can do this with subdivisions. So you'll see I've highlighted wherever I put subdivisions. It's a possibility, but you might run into a lot more difficulties with it. You keep it more restricted to special permit uses, you've got more control over it. Because you got the special permit, where those dwelling units are going to be, you can impose the conditions, you can monitor everything that's going on. Whereas with a subdivision, it's more loosey-goosey, and it's hard to ensure that the buildings actually get built. Because if the developer's not a builder, he just wants to sell the lots, you're going to tie him up, you're going to get sued. That's, and he's not going to want to give you a lot. I mean, $200,000 or something out of, he's building 5 lots. It just didn't make sense. So I kind of am backing off from suggesting that, and I'm thinking you should tighten up what you have now, because you can't tell what's required when. It's just everybody has to do it, but how, and how is it, who monitors it, who decides? So I'm suggesting strongly that you require it as a condition of any special permit that allows a residential development. That could be a single family development, for example, if it's a cluster where the builder is building units. Could be a multifamily conversion, could be a multifamily dwelling, mixed use building. I put in mixed use development. We don't have that in the use table yet. We probably will add that in later. But anywhere where the developer's actually building something, building dwelling units. The minimum of 10%, this was the subdivision one that I added in. And I'm just, as I said, I'm concerned about it, but you
I think
currently,
this is more workable than what we have now.
I think this is more workable, but I think this thing with a subdivision could run you into some issues. Part of the problem, and I don't want to undo what, you know, throw out the baby with the bathwater on this. So I'm trying to deal with what you have. But one of the problems that you have is who's monitoring the sales of these units? Who's working with DHCD, and now it's Executive Office of Housing and whatever. It's not DHCD anymore. But who's working with them on getting these LIP approvals, these LIP program applications approved? Who is making sure if there's money granted in lieu, who's building the units on what property? You know, like there's a whole infrastructure that has to go behind actually implementing this in a
You're
big
right.
way.
In the past, we've hired a housing consultant and then recommended to the developer that they have a housing consultant,
Right.
which makes sense for 20 units or 40 units or
Yeah.
100, whatever.
Yeah.
But
But
for one or two, it's kind of hard to manage, as you point out. And the subdivision single family house developer doesn't know anything about it.
right. Right. So
I mean,
so
how
I'm
much
just
how much
saying-
land do we have left that you can get 10 or more lots on with a subdivision?
I'll bet there's a number. I mean, I only know of Rattlesnake Run, but
Yeah, I mean, there's some, but I mean, we're getting down to the
Yeah.
what's left on the shelf at this point.
We
I
do
mean-
have the Affordable Housing Committee.
Yeah.
As
I
a
mean,
matter of fact, we are working with them about some other things that may or may not be going on in the town. So they're being empowered to do a little bit more. So this might be a home for this type of control and regulation.
Okay, because if the lots, for example, have to be donated to the town, who's going to build on them? Who's going to sell them? Who's going to, you know, who's going to get that figured out?
Well, the Affordable Housing Committee is doing that now on a couple of things that they've taken over. They
Okay.
also bought the
trust, we have a committee and a trust.
yeah, I know, and we'll have to decide which one. But
Yeah.
for instance, we did a Habitat for Humanity, and they bought one of the units and is developing it. And as a
Okay.
matter of fact, we were just in some other things discussing empowering them to do some things. So I think that's something that needs to have some thought, because we do need some way of doing that, because there's some other things that are pending at the town level.
Right.
But when do we need to finalize this language? Because it doesn't,
Before the selectmen's meeting on the 5th.
I mean, this is good because again,
Couple
this provides a minimum. So if the Affordable Housing Committee want to do something and go above this, but at least this provides the minimum of what you have to do with the, you know, with the amount of units. So
I mean, the reality is, planning board's gonna hold public hearings, so we still
Yeah.
have time to change the final language before the warrant gets printed.
Right. So I'm thinking you're going to get a lot of pushback on this subdivision thing.
Yeah, even though it's in now.
Well, you don't say anything about, you don't say that it's got to be a special permit use or subdivisions. You just say any development that's going to create that's going to result in 5 dwelling units net.
Okay, but
I
I
mean-
mean, I guess the point is, this could go to the selectmen for inclusion in the warrant and for planning board holding public hearings with the language that you have now.
And this is very comprehensive, and then we can.
Yeah.
cut
And
back.
then, and
By
then
the
we kick it
way-
around, right? We kick it around in the public forum.
You just can't make make more requirements than you have. You
Judge
can't
Cutler,
increase the requirement.
Judge Cutler, may I
Yeah.
suggest that tomorrow you talk to Sharon?
Yeah,
from your office, and my concerns will be a little bit clearer,
okay,
and you'll have an idea of what things we might work out.
okay, all right. All right, so right now, I added in that development projects and subdivisions may not be segmented into phases to avoid compliance. So you can't say,
Yeah.
well, I'm not 5, it's only 3, and then next week. it's
Yeah,
2
no,
more.
no tacking. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Good, that's
So-
good.
Right now, you say that whenever the calculation results in 0.5 or more, a fractional number, you have to round it up. Rather, just any fractional number, you have to round up. So if it's a 0.0001, you have to round it up to a whole one. That's kind of extreme.
It's pretty unfair. It's unfair to the person with 11 units, right? Instead of 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little unfair. So
Yeah.
I just suggested you say if it's 0.5 or more, it's a whole number. If it's less than 0.5,
Hmm.
that's where you have the option of doing it. You can do a whole number if you want, or you can make a cash equivalent that's more in line with the fractional number that it is.
Yeah.
So the lesser cash contribution.
Yeah.
But if you want to, and you say, well, no, I just want to do
Well-
another unit,
well,
you can.
What about the example of five units? There, it's, it's a requirement for this affordable housing.
No,
if-
it's a net increase of 5. So
So
you
you
already
would
have
have to
one-
supply one for the 5 unit
right.
project up to 10. So between 5 and 15 or 14.
Series.
Right.
6 minutes.
14, up to
Minutes.
14 would be one inclusionary unit.
Yeah.
Got
Well,
it.
no, 10% of the 5 is 0.5. So you'd have to do one inclusionary unit for 5.
One for 5, and
Right.
then one up to 14. You don't get to 2 units until you hit 15.
Well, 10%, 10% of 10 is 1, right? 1 unit, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, 1 unit, but up to 14, because it's,
And this is what you have now. It's just that you have to have a whole unit no matter what fraction
right,
that you have. So I'm just suggesting that it's a little less confiscatory to do it this way. But
Yeah,
also to allow them the option, they don't get off scot-free. They may have to come up with a cash contribution if they don't come up to a full unit.
I think that's fair.
And then we have right now already in the bylaw that if any federal or state law requires a greater percentage, then the greater percentage will control.
I think what you did to reform this is good enough for now, because I mean, it's going to get chewed on by a few of the other boards and see what they think.
Right. So here, the required units or lots, if we keep that in, have to be provided within the subject development site, except when the applicant is elected to make a cash payment in lieu of rounding up a fractional lot. Okay, so it's obviously there's not going to be one built in that development. If there's that fraction thing won't be built in the development. There'll be a cash contribution. Or where the designated special permit granting authority finds good cause for allowing that requirement to be met off-site, or with a fee in lieu cash payment. And further finds that allowing it will serve the purposes, which is to increase the local action units and the housing subsidy in the town.
One of the problems with doing this is that when you allow the developer to increase the number of units, and they don't provide those affordable units within their own development,
Right.
and you allow them to buy their way out, what happens is they buy their way out. They will then take an existing affordable thing, development in town, and they'll just buy it or rent it.
This
And
doesn't
so-
allow them to buy it out. This is not in lieu of the requirement. This is only where there's a fractional number of less than.
Oh, no, not the fractional, but I'm reading down further. special permit granting authority.
Oh,
The
Good
Oh,
mini pad
God.
offsite.
they allow it. Well,
Offsite.
When
because,
they allow it off-site, then you don't have production of new.
okay, so
And the
just,
other thing that they do that every time. And so
okay,
don't get, and the units never get built, by the way, or they take over existing kind of low income or more affordable things, and we've seen that happen. And
so
I
you want
think-
to leave that off to be met with with a fee in lieu cash payment to the Affordable Housing?
I think we don't want to allow that.
At all?
I mean, the planning board changed this language a couple of years ago to give the options. And I think Tom's point was that it's sometimes important to have options, but we have to make it that it's a strong preference that they be on site. And any other options would be secondarily considered secondarily.
And that's
Well,
what this,
That,
they
and
have
that
to
was the
be-
point, not to say, no, you can't have an option, because that's what we had before.
Well, the problem with that is very simple. The reality of Cohasset is that means they're all going to be off-site. They'll buy their way out of it.
No,
And and they're not going to end up they're buying existing units in town. And I can go right down the street, from my street, where that's what happened. Affordable units are now being used to satisfy that.
Yeah.
It's how the development world works. They don't want to do that. The other thing is that when you have a management, maybe you can allow that they can create the new units off-site, but
Mhm.
then that will create housing. If we allow them to buy their way out, or they pay money to the affordable housing, who then has to find a place in Cohasset to build it, which they're not find, and then they have to figure out how to
yeah,
build that.
the
which
trust
they don't
isn't,
capacity-
you're not good at development.
No. So you
You're
tell
never gonna be good at it.
the people who are good at it and say, you got to do it. You're a developer. You have to do it.
So they
Otherwise-
could
Okay, well,
it could be built, new units could be built off-site in a location approved by the planning board
Yes, in Cohasset.
in Cohasset, right?
Yeah.
No
That's-
cash fee,
but
no
I
fee in
don't
lieu.
know. I mean, I think we should kick this around and get consensus on how this really works.
Well, we know how it works. I can tell you how it works.
You don't have to tell me how it
You
works.
know
I
how it works,
understand how
too.
it works. But I think building consensus on your concept, I think, would be a good idea. I think we need to kick it around, not just have you tell us what to do.
No, I know, but I'm bringing it up and I
Okay,
think
no,
we
that's
gotta
fair.
socialize it.
That's definitely fair, Jack.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up because this is how it works in practice, and our
I-
job in
I
rewriting.
think
Just
it's a good point.
work.
I think Tom's made the same point too. So I mean, it's not new. There's concern that lowercase affordable will be turned into uppercase affordable because big shot developers want their $3 million units, not
Right,
in with the others.
Right.
and we don't get more units, which is what we really need.
The other thing that you run into is it pits one neighborhood against another,
Yes,
because
Oh, yeah.
where it's going is going to be opposing it.
Down by the railroad tracks,
yeah, that's
so to
exactly,
speak. Just
that's what happened. Exactly what
who
happened.
wants to live by the railroad tracks? Hey, we have a train in our town.
Or, one longtime landlord said, great. So now he's got guaranteed, no headache.
Right.
Well, I mean, the reality of a developer could do a buy down of existing units to
what
satisfy
they
the
did.
requirement, and that's
Exactly
the
what
cheap
they
way
did.
out.
It's exactly what they did.
Okay, all right, so we'll
All
keep
right.
this is also on our to-do list, okay? We're
Okay,
running
good.
out of- Okay,
We have more
Um,
chance to kick it around.
yeah. Okay, the last item, deed restrictions, I added in there, you don't require that now. But I think we have to make it clear
Yes.
that it will be subject to an affordable deed rider. Okay, all right, so that is it. So we really still have to go back to this particular section and The want to make sure we have everything tied up on the accessory dwelling units and go back to the table of uses next week. But I will, in the meantime, send you the definitions that have to go in. And tell you we have to make 2 changes in conjunction with Article 4. We have to delete Article 15. That's the accessory housing section now, because that's incorporated now in 4. And we're going to have to take out the common driveway language out of Article 7, because we're dealing with common driveways now in Article 4. And then there'll be a list of probably 3 new definitions and probably 4 or 5 amendments to existing definitions, just so that all the language is going to be consistent, and possibly deleting a couple of definitions that are no longer usable, like lodging unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're in pretty good shape here, and I'm also sending you this week the new Article 5 regulations and table.
That sounds
So,
great.
all
A
right.
lot of work. Thank you, Your Honor.
To work, but we got to do it. So, you know, just I'm going to be out of commission for about 2 weeks in early September. I've got some medical stuff scheduled, but I should be back ready to go again the 3rd week in September. And I've asked that the planning board have its public hearing the last week in September, so I can, my voice, I'm doing something that may affect my voice. So I
Okay.
wanted to make sure I could talk.
Well,
Yeah.
I wish you well. There are people who suggested that I need something that might affect my voice, but I think it's different.
You mean a volume control?
No, just shut it off entirely. Come on.
An off switch? An off
Shut it off. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
people.
funny, Jack. That's funny.
So I continue to find little bits and pieces, and I'm fixing them up as fast as I can just to make sure. Cassandra, I know you're anxious to get something that you can post on the website. So hopefully we'll have something at least we can stick on the website this week. And then if we tinker with it, we can change it. And then hopefully we'll get Article 5 up the following week. If the gods are willing and everything works out well. And I don't know, Jack, I don't know whether the Board of Selectmen will be considering any of this stuff in depth, or it's just to know what's going on in the warrant and sort of the general scope of it.
I'll find out. We are watching it, but one of the reasons why we decided a while ago to put you basically in charge is because we felt that your expertise and our charge would work together well. So, and with the members of the zoning committee who've worked very hard, so we won't have a lot of controversy. So it's well thought out, and it's by best practices and commonly accepted legal practices around the Commonwealth. So we are completely in your debt.
Well, I'm sorry that we couldn't. I'm sorry we got backed up on time, because we were going to have Article 7 too.
Look,
We'll pick it up in the spring. That's
we'll
okay.
pick it up. We're doing what we can. We're moving on a lot of
Moving
fronts
forward.
townwide.
And this is the big, really the big lift was 4 and 5.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thing. And once that's done, the others are going to be less
Very
difficult.
Great. Thank you.
Hey,
We're
thank you
done.
very much, and keep the faith.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank-
motion to adjourn.
Judge,
I don't think we have our chairman.
Well, we can make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
You
motion.
can make a
Yeah, I'll
motion.
second your motion and vote aye.
Okay.
all
Thanks,
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote, aye, whatever you want to do. I
Great.
Good night, everyone.
don't.
Night.
Right.